So whatever years you put in there is fine. But affirmations will help bridge your belief system into a much greater idea and expression of your lifespan than a mass consensus reality norm, which I think is stupid. All right, we'll look at diets and the diets that people are recommending for better health. And the first diet we'll talk about is a very popular diet now called the Mediterranean diet. And it lists foods that are commonly eaten in the Mediterranean area, which people claim has a higher health than other parts of the world. And so, what do they eat? Well, you see this list here. They eat a lot of vegetables. They eat a lot of nuts and seeds. They eat a lot of beans and peas, legumes. They eat whole grains, and the list is what the people say they eat on the websites that you can look at. They eat fish and seafood, which you can see here, poultry, eggs, dairy, herbs, spices, and healthy fats. And they have a list of foods that they suggest that you limit. And these have to do with added foods that have added sugar in them. And many foods do have this. It's very common in sodas, candies, ice cream, etc. You know, I heard a comment one time some years ago that every human eats a big toxic load of one candy bar. It puts the body into a difficult spot here. I listened to that and I heard, wow, candy bars, toxic load, wow. You know, if you think about this a little bit, in the teenage years you go through, candies are very popular with kids in that age group, and it tends to promote skin eruptions, pimples, and other problems. And so it is a toxic load. Let's get serious about this. And what about the added sugar? Sugar's hard for the body to dispose of. It's hard for the body to utilize. The sugars that you need should be found and gotten in your fruits. You don't need the processed sugars in the other foods, and they're difficult for the body to handle and deal with. All right, they recommend that you limit refined grains, and many grains found in breads, pastas, etc. have been refined. They recommend limiting trans fat foods. It's called trans fat food, found in margarine and other fried and processed fatty foods, such as pizza, etc. And they recommend you limit refined oils. Okay, what's a refined oil? Soybean oil is one. So is canola oil. Cottonseed and grapeseed oil are refined oils. Those should be limited. And the Mediterranean diets also talk about limiting processed meats. Those aren't so great for you. And here's a list of processed meats that they recommend that you limit. Highly processed foods should be limited, such as the foods that you find in fast food eateries, convenience meals, etc. Microwave popcorn's on the list. And all of the soda pop drinks are not very healthy for the body. Those should be limited. That's the Mediterranean diet. Well, is there something better than that? I believe there is, and it's called the Primal Diet. It was given to the planet by a man named Vonderplanitz, and it's said to be the diet of our ancestors, who were hunter-gatherers 8,000 years ago. There's no such thing as cooked food because man did not start working with fire until about 5,000 years ago. So the food that was eaten during the hunter-gatherer phase was all raw, basically. And that's what we're programmed for. And it consists of raw dairy. And we'll talk about that next slide here. Raw vegetables, raw fruits, raw uncooked eggs and meat. Uncooked eggs, yeah, uncooked eggs. One of the gals where I work said she couldn't do uncooked eggs, they're too squishy. Well, You have to get into the squishiness, I guess. Love the squishy. uh, Forgive this typo here. This should be unheated and unsalted nuts and seeds. Well, if you heat roast the nuts and seeds, what do you have? You have cooked fat again. And like we said, cooked fat is problematical. So is salt. We'll talk about that next slide. The primal diet also consists of cooked starches and legumes. Starches are better absorbed when they're cooked. That's the one exception. Also on this list is raw honey that I haven't included. Raw honey means unpasteurized honey. It means unheated honey. Unheated. Raw doesn't mean anything in the label. You have to ask and be sure the honey's been unheated. All right, so the primal diet continued consists of unpasteurized dairy. And there have been a lot of studies done about the problems of pasteurization. Actually, I've heard that pasteurized dairy deposits tiny little globules of fat in your brain. We don't want that. And there are other problems too. Pasteurized dairy is a non-vital food, meaning that when they heat it to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, all of the vital enzymes are destroyed. So it's a compromised food. Unpasteurized dairy, or raw dairy, in raw milk, cream, cheese, and butter, is a vital food. It has the enzymes and the nutrients, etc. And it's very good for you. But it's hard to get. Only about 11 states in the USA, I believe, I've looked at the list recently, have legalized raw dairy. I happen to live in one of those states that has, but if you don't have a state or a location that legalizes raw dairy, you can still obtain it from what's called cow share programs in most states in the USA. And if you Google the website called Real Milk, REALMILK, realmilk.com, you can pull up all of the states in the USA and find out what area has the cow share programs. If you live in other countries around the world, Google your own local location and see if you can't find some resource where you can obtain raw dairy. It's worth your while to do it. Also, the primal diet consists of raw vegetables and raw fruits. Raw vegetables are powerfully concentrated in a freshly juiced glass of veggie juice, with a good juicing machine, and also with raw fruits. But it's okay to just have a very good vegetable salad daily. And this should be good vegetables, not just simply iceberg lettuce. All of the major green veggies plus carrots and beets should be in this diet. And you might toss in some nuts and seeds, like I do. And raw fruits. These are a major part of the primal diet, and were part of the diet of our ancestors. Raw uncooked eggs. 8,000 years ago, there was no such thing as cooking anything, and so the eggs that were obtained were eaten right, to pop down the hatch. And the people were just glad to have the food, really, But in our day, people get squeamish about that. And if you are one of the squeamish people, you can do the raw eggs in an eggnog, and that can be quite delicious. A couple of raw eggs, and if you can get the unpasteurized milk, that's great. Otherwise, you'll have to use standard milk. And a tablespoon or so of unheated honey. That means it has not been heated above 105 Fahrenheit. Well, I'd say 101 Fahrenheit. Basically right out of the hive. And if the honey has been heated, then it's nothing but a high sugar load, all the enzymes have been destroyed by the heating process. And where do I find unheated honey? I find unheated honey at local farmers markets in my area. In other parts of the world, you can, I'm sure, ask around and find sources where the honey is right out of the hive and not been heated. But anyway, an eggnog with a couple of eggs, milk, and unheated honey, and any fruit that you like is a delicious way to start eating eggs raw. By the way, I've read that eggs are one of the most perfect foods for humans, and so they should not be overlooked. Unsalted and unroasted, forgive the typo here, it should be unroasted nuts and seeds. Okay, nuts and seeds are commonly roasted. But what does roasting or cooking any food do that has fat in it? It converts the fat to cooked fat, right? And that coats the arteries. You want to avoid cooked fat. And salt basically is hard for the body to get rid of and does contribute to high blood pressure. You get enough salt in your raw veggies, particularly celery is high in salt. The primal diet does include meat, but it's raw, uncooked meat. Most people are going to be pretty squeamish about that too. I can't eat raw meat, Well, if you look at the immortals of India, there are a couple of books out about that. They always say, vegans only here. Meat is totally excluded. There are many reasons for this, and one of the ones that I'm going to mention, and this right now and in the next slide, is that eating any cooked meat, red meat particularly, adds a toxin called heterocyclic amine, and this toxin is linked to cancer risk. So really, to keep your cancer risk low, it's a good idea to say, I'm going to limit my meat, All right, so the primal diet also has cooked starches because they're better absorbed, and we all know what the starches are. And cooked legumes, beans and peas. So let's look at what's wrong with SAD. Well, SAD's an acronym coined by Mr. Vonderplanitz in his two books that the Primal Diet is based on. The first book is We Want to Live, and the second book is Recipe for Living Without Disease by Vonderplanitz. And these basically talk about what's wrong with SAD. Well, the cooked foods lack vital nutrients. The cooking process destroys the enzymes and most of the minerals and vitamins. So you get a food that doesn't support cell regeneration very well. It contributes to disease. It contributes to heart disease. The cooked fat builds plaque in the arteries. It contributes to diabetes. The processed sugars that loaded in pastries overload the pancreas, and after a while the pancreas breaks down. It contributes to cancer. Cooked meat in particular, with this heterocyclic amine, creates a 30% higher cancer risk. So that's what's wrong with SAD. All right, so it's recommended that you make some dietary changes to really go for it, to really go for life extension and not worry so much about health problems. It's a good idea to modify your diet and begin right now. I want to mention a couple of combinations, food combinations, that can help the body to eliminate substances that some people, there's literature out there that points to problems caused by the cell phone tower and satellite emissions, frequency emissions in the 5G range. I mean in the fifth generation of these frequencies in the gigahertz range. Okay, if you eat avocados and oranges together at the same time, they help the body to eliminate some of the substances that are said to weaken the immune system. And so I do that. And it's recommended once a week to eat a combination of avocados and oranges to help eliminate the substances that interfere with the immune system. Or also pineapple and coconut cream, coconut cream. Coconut cream has become widely available now in many supermarkets in USA. And if you take coconut and crush it and combine it with coconut cream, many different ways to do that. If you consume this combination maybe an hour or a half an hour before, probably about a half an hour before, you do a soak in hot water at 105 Fahrenheit, or even hotter, 107 if you can find a place that goes that high. It's very good because it activates the body's lymph system. The body's lymph system is activated, and this removes heavy metals. It's a good idea to do this once or twice a year. Make plans to go to a hot spring that has a soak pool that goes to 105, or 107 is better. And then take along pineapple and coconut cream and do this lymph flush to remove and get rid of heavy metals. All right, let's talk about not eating and life extension. In the classes I used to go to in rebirthing and physical immortality training, they would always talk about doing a fast. And the first book on this, entitled Physical Immortality, by a man named Leonard Orr, said he went to India to train under a master named Babaji. And Babaji had him fast 1 day a week for a whole year. 1 day a week for a whole year. And then Leonard went back to India a second time, and at the end of that visit, Babaji said, now I want you to fast 3 days a week every year. Let's go back. 3 days a week every year. And other people have talked about life extension and suggested fasting at least 1 day a week. Every week, all year, every year. Yesterday I did a 1 day fast. It was just, I just breezed through it. I was just too busy to do anything else, and the extra time was sort of valuable, really. And so what does a 1 day a week fast do? Well, it helps prevent overweight, for one thing. That's good. It helps purification. It improves your digestion. It helps your health, basically, too, when you get into this, you should eventually push it out a little bit. Let's go for 2 days, maybe 4 days, even a week, a whole week. And when you get that far, what does it do? It helps your cleansing a lot more. It helps the beginning mastery. When you can do this, it's a sign of mastery beginning to kick in here. Now let's talk about going longer. This year, I did my long fast, and that was in this last column. But if you can fast 1 week to 1 month, occasionally, it's much greater cleansing. I'll tell you, much greater cleansing. And it's much greater mastery here, When I first did my 1 month fast, about 4 or 5 years ago, it was hard. Yeah, it was hard. But when you get through it, you say, wow, I did it. And the cleansing is just unbelievable, Well, beyond that, fasting 1 month to 2 months once a year, say, 2 months, 60 days, what is that, 60 days, much greater cleansing. Wow, I really get into it. And I have to say, I did a 8-week long fast this year. That's a couple of days short of 2 months. And this was the greatest cleansing ever, to tell you the honest truth. It really was. And it demonstrates greater mastery. If you can do that, you can do almost anything. And I'm really into this life extension bit. And there's literature out there that says the immortal masters of India would actually be able to fast 3 months. Can you think of the cleansing that does? 3 months. And all they take is a certain herbal tea and water. 3 months. I don't recommend anybody go over 2 months. I really don't, because people have died from fasting. But I want to say right now that if you keep it to under 2 months and go slow, start out like I show here. And I wouldn't even try to do 2 months until after you've done a 1 month, and then a 1.5 month. Don't shoot for 2 months right off the bat. It'll be way too hard, and you could end up hurting yourself. But people will ask, well, can I starve to death? Well, no, you won't starve to death if you follow the body's natural signals. When you get to the point of starvation, you go into a great hunger. At least that's what I've read. I've never reached that point yet. But when you get that great hunger, it's time to stop the fast. It's time to break the fast. How can you go 1 month? Well, the animals fast 1 month all the time during the winter. And their body's designed to feed the vital organs, the heart, lungs, liver, kidney, etc., brain, from breakdown products that the ketone process uses during the fasting period. And humans have the same system. You have the feeding process, the digestive system, and the fasting system, which involves the ketone breakdown of non-vital tissues. It starts first with the fat reserves, and then it breaks down the muscle tissues. And these are used to feed the vital organs, so the vital organs never go unfed, whether you're feeding or fasting. And so the benefits from fasting have long been documented, and the long fast was one of the ancient secrets of the immortals. And when I hear this, because I'm going to go into life extension, it's just in my blood, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take it, I'm going to do the fasting, because it's part of longevity, it's part of life extension. All right, I want to say a couple of comments about water before I close this session. The better water is from veggies and fruits, not from bottled water. Why is that? Well, because bottled water, even though it's purified of the standard toxins, does contain 150 parts per million of a toxin called heavy water. This is really only found fairly recently, having to do with studies on why the Hunza people of Pakistan live longer than their neighbors. It was noticed that the Hunzas have more centenarians than the neighbors. Well, the researchers began to investigate. Why is this? The Hunzas said, well, it's our water. The researchers decided, well, let's look at the water. What was the water? And it was a glacial meltwater. It turns out that the freezing process eliminates from 4 to 8% of the heavy water in standard water. And so the water the Hunzas drank had 4 to 8% less heavy water in it than the 150 parts per million that we all drink. Okay? And so this slightly reduced content of heavy water helped the Hunzas live longer. But when I heard about this, I said, I'm going for it, because I'm going to extend my life. That's all there is to it. And so I began to buy Lite Water. There's a website out there called Lite Water, Lite water.com. I'm not promoting them. I'm just saying that it is something that will help you live longer, I think. Anyway, I've been taking, I only drink Lite Water now, and I've been drinking it for about 2 years. It is expensive. If you can't afford it, don't worry about it. Maybe later on it'll get cheaper. But I can tell you right now that the heavy water, inhibits, and there's literature about this that says this, the heavy water in standard water of the world inhibits cell regeneration. It's one of the reasons you don't live long as you could live. And so when you begin to go out of your way to eliminate some of this heavy water, you can find that you regenerate better. And I have regenerated damaged fingernails and toenails that were not regenerating for a period of 10 years after the damage took place, after the injury took place. And now I'm finding that with the heavy water, and I even cook rice with heavy water, my toenail that hadn't regenerated and my fingernails that had not regenerated after being damaged are now regenerating, So this is higher regeneration. I'm going to go back here and look at the better water. Most of you aren't going to be able to say, yeah, I'm going to buy heavy Lite Water because, what I've said, what you read about it, because it's just too expensive, But the better water than standard bottled water is obtained from veggies and fruits, and that's another reason to do fruit juicing and veggie juicing with a good juicer, because you get this water from the veggie itself or the fruit itself that is more energized because it's in the matrix of the vegetable or the fruit, and that it has a beneficial positive charge. It has a beneficial, charge that will help your body have more energy. And so, to avoid the high cost of light water, commercially available light water, you can, and are advised, I would say, to get more of your water from juiced veggies and juiced fruits, or just standard fruits without being juiced, and so that is a few comments about water. All right, so this is class 3. We talked about better diets to help you live longer, extend your life, and we'll continue this class 4, 5, and on with all other topics that keep people from living longer. And so I wish you good dietary choices in the future. I'm Bob Guth, and we look forward to our next class. Bye for now.